Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is a channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on, and talk about some books. Now, it has been not that long actually since I last did a 5-book reading update, but I have been way behind on these for a while, so you guys are just gonna get a few of them in a row because I don't want to do all of the books in one video, but I do want to tell you what I've been reading lately in the normal format. And so as to not dawdle, I'm going to just jump straight in with the first book, which is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This book I gave 4 stars and it is the beginning of my big Sarah J. Maas reread in publication order series project thing that I am doing at the moment. I don't know what video I'm going to build out of it yet, so do let me know suggestions down below of what you want to see. But as for what the book is about, it follows Selena Sardothian, who at the beginning of the book is in a prison camp in Andovia as a result of her crimes as a sort of famous assassin in Ardalan. She is just trying to survive, trying to get by, trying to fight the demons of her past until one day the prince and I think the head of security or the head of the guard comes along and offers her the opportunity of a lifetime to escape Andovia and participate in a competition to become the king's champion, which after a number of years of service, if she's successful, will result in her freedom. Of course, she takes them up on this offer and it thrusts her into a world of courtly intrigue and scandal and murder, as well as some of her fellow competitors start winding up dead in really gruesome ways. So she's determined to figure out what's happening to them, stay alive, and earn her freedom. As for my thoughts on this book, I think Throne of Glass is really just the perfect first book in a series. It sets everything up so well, not throwing you into too much so that you're really playing catch up for the rest of the series, but establishing a world and baseline sort of magical system and a political system that you can kind of get your head around before it starts to expand. And it establishes a really good base ground for a lot of these relationships, which I think are going to become alliances later on in the series, if I had to guess. The major political powers at play and who the sort of villains are, or at least a hint to who the villains are going to be in this series. Of course, like so many others, I finished this book truly shipping Selena and Dorian, but also knowing that was never going to happen because Sarah J. Maas likes to throw us for a loop and give us a really perfect couple and then take it away from us immediately. But I kind of understand why Selena's really attracted to Cale as well, because she does seem to really gravitate towards soldiers and strength rather than sort of charm and grace like you would find in someone like Dorian. Finishing this book, I was excited to explore the depth of the king's evil a little bit more and understand the origins of it and this ring that he's wearing and what that means, because it's constantly referenced throughout the book, which felt like foreshadowing. And I was excited to see how Selena would potentially manage fulfilling her duties in this court with her relationship with some characters such as Nehemia, who are definitely more in favor of the rebel movements at play in this world. I did finish this book not loving Selena, and you will see that mentioned throughout many videos on this series to come, because I just don't like her as a character, and that's nothing against the book, nothing against the writing. She bugs me. She's a classic case, I think, of an author trying to write a young character really oldly, and it feels really disconnected and jarring. But anyway, I will link up above and down below a vlog where I talk a bit more about that if you are interested in a sort of mini rant on why that bugs me so much. But yeah, I gave this book 4 stars, and immediately afterwards I jumped right into The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. The Cruel Prince, I believe, follows a number of sisters, the main one being Jude, the main one we follow being Jude, who are orphaned and then kidnapped by the man who orphaned them and sort of raised as part of his family in the Fae world. Jude is raised in the Fae world knowing that she is different because she's human and facing a lot of discrimination from the Fae people as a result of that. In particular, being bullied and harassed by Prince Carden, I think his name is. It's been so long since I read this book. But I guess later on throughout the book, you begin to realize that they may need each other more than they potentially want to admit. I gave this book 3 stars. I did enjoy it, but I did have a couple of issues with it, which I will go into. Admittedly, the plot twist for this book was really quite predictable. I did see it coming from quite a fair way into the book. However, the brutality and the violence of the story was wholly unexpected. I did not see that coming. I expected this to be YA, and it felt like more adult at times. This story is undeniably built on morally great characters, and I don't think Holly Black is really trying to make you like any of them at all, and I didn't. But I think this book also reinforced to me why I kind of hate bully romances, because there are so many moments between the prince and Jude where I'm like, he treated you so badly and you both treated each other so badly. how could this possibly turn into a romance? I don't buy that. And at the end of the day, the scenes where Jude and Cardan were interacting with everybody except each other ended up being my favorite scenes in the book, which is why it kind of bumped up the rating a little bit, because I did like the sort of outer world that existed outside of these two main characters. I did love the sort of red wedding style coronation and the build up that happened directly before it and all the twists that happened within it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this sort of year and a day contract between Jude and Cardan is going to go. So yeah, 3 stars, didn't love it, didn't hate it. Next up, we continued in the Throne of Glass universe with Crown of Midnight by Sarah J Maas, which I gave 4 stars, and I am not going to tell you what it was about. You are just going to have to look it up yourself because I don't want to be the burden of spoilers. Immediately after finishing this book, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I'd forgotten how flooring the ending was at the end of this book, and I remember laughing to myself like, Kale, you are an idiot, like idiot. But now that I've read this book again, I kind of see all the hints that were dropped throughout the book, and I like seeing all those subtle hints. If you've heard me talk about any mystery before, I love seeing those subtle hints where you go, oh, that totally makes sense how the author got to that point later on because this hint was dropped and this hint was dropped. But I still left the book with so many questions and so many loose ends, and I think I'm just going to have to accept the fact that I'm never going to fully understand the magic system in this world. The atmospheric writing in this book is a real credit to Sarah J Maas because it places you in those spooky corridors and those creepy, you know, areas of those castles, and it feels dark and gloomy and like gothic fairy tale castle kind of thing. And Sarah J Maas was able to make me connect with the characters so much more than in the first book. So when they were hurt, I was hurt. My favorite moment is, if you've read this book, you probably know it, but it's that breaking point, I think in the middle-ish of the book, which came a lot sooner than I was expecting, but it's that breaking point where the whole rebel plot just explodes. And whilst that moment killed me, I was so sad, it was also fascinating to watch the immediate aftermath of that in some of the prison camps. But I still hate Selena. Next up, I read The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, which I gave 2 stars. Did not like this series of novellas. It did not feel complete to me. The Assassin's Blade is a series of 5 novellas that are set in the immediate events prior to Throne of Glass, and it's sort of the unwinding of Selena's life and how she ended up in Andovia and all the betrayals that she faced, all the characters she met along the way, who I feel like are going to become relevant later on in the series. But this book didn't really serve a purpose as its own standalone thing. It just felt like filler information that could have been added in at any point in the Throne of Glass series, but was put here as a separate thing, and I just don't think it needed to happen. I'm not going to rant and rave about my thoughts on this particular series of novellas. I covered it in a vlog, which I will link up above and down below if you want to hear more about my thoughts, but I just didn't think there was enough there. I didn't think that the stakes felt high enough in a lot of the situations that Selena and her sort of villain of the story were in. There were moments where it was completely unbelievable, and you know, someone would have their entire life at stake and they'd be handed back their weapon, given the opportunity to continue to fight, but they would refuse to do so because they'd been defeated once. And it just, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it as anything more than information filler, info dumps for things that might be relevant later on in the series. And last up in this video, we've got Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas, which I gave again 4 stars. We seem to have a good 4-star rating going for a lot of these Throne of Glass books, with Assassin's Blade being the only one that let us down. Again, I'm not going to tell you what this book is about. It follows the immediate events from Crown of Midnight, so if that means anything to you, then there you go. And to me, this was the book that was intended to make the readers fall in love with the characters. This is where you got to see the hidden depths to Selena. This is where you got to meet some characters who were potentially polarizing and not particularly likable at the beginning, but they had a real beautiful character arc to follow throughout the book that you ended up loving them at the end. Almost every character in this book was given heart and feeling that would make you absolutely fall in love with them, and that worked for most of them. Selena, still not a huge fan. I loved that the world expanded so much more in this book compared to the previous one. Like, just even from the fact that you got so many more POVs, you were in multiple different locations, you were meeting tons and tons of different creatures, and there was a good little training montage in there that I thought was kind of perfectly paced in the book itself, and then generally in the rest of the series to have it as a sort of 3rd book once they built the building blocks of the magic system, you know, to expand on it a bit more at this point. But unfortunately, the magic system and Fae history still continues to confuse me. I don't think I'm ever going to wrap my head around it, and I'm just gonna have to accept that fact, like I said before. So you know what, it's just gonna be one of those things that I have question marks about, but it doesn't seem to hinder my enjoyment of the series too much because the fight scenes are so built out that you kind of understand the powers at play and why they're fighting, that you don't need to understand the specific limitations of their magic necessarily. I have to flag obviously Dorian's story in this book because I loved him so much. He's one of my favorite characters and I was so happy for him at the beginning of this book and throughout. And then obviously at the end, it's another moment where Sarah J Maas puts a romance in that you really fall in love with and then tears it away from you. And I love her for it because it makes everything feel so high stakes, but I hate her for it because I just want some of my favorite characters to just be happy. He deserves it. He has gone through enough. He has been rejected and now he has lost the one person that he truly would have been perfect with, and that just made me sad. But anyway, I gave this book 4 stars. I'm still not able to connect with Selena, but we are just gonna go with it. And that is the last book that I am going to mention in this video. So now that we're at the end of the video, let me know down below what you thought of the books that I read recently. If you have read any of them yourself, loved them, hated them, if you think there's anything that I've missed in any of these books that could potentially change my mind on how I feel about them, let me know what you have read recently as well. I always listen to what you guys have read recently because it sort of helps me pick what I want to read, because there are books that you guys have sort of discussed that I've never heard of and I'm always keen to hear about them. So talk about that down below and I will maybe pick up a few of them. As always, like, subscribe and hit that notification bell down below to be notified whenever I release new videos. It is a super easy way to help me grow and to support my channel, and I would love you eternally for it. And I will see you lovely people in the next video. Bye!